So what's the last thing you'd expect a demon to look like? I mean, we've all seen creepy dolls, possessed kids, and even a demonic shark once or twice. But what about the very thing that's supposed to keep them away? That's right, Meat Shields, we're going back to the Conjureverse for another marathon episode, and this time we're taking on one of the most terrifying demons in the entire series. It's got ancient castles, zombie nuns, ghost kids, and even a goat man, so we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the demonic nun in the Nun 1 and 2. The story begins way back in 1952 at an abbey somewhere deep in the forests of Romania. Late one night, we find two nuns approaching a door at the end of a dark hallway, but the younger of the two, Sister Victoria, seems nervous about their plan. Unlocking it with a special key, her friend Sister Jessica opens the door and disappears into the chamber, but within seconds, she comes crawling back with blood all over her face, handing her the key as she's dragged back into the darkness. Holy Terrified, Victoria runs back down the hallway until she reaches an open window, turning around to see the shadow of a demonic nun closing in right behind her. And with no other choice, she does the only thing left to prevent the demon from escaping, making 2 down with 3 more to go. It isn't until the next morning that a farmer who goes by the name of Frenchie finds the woman's body on the steps, but he has no idea that his worst nightmare is about to begin. When the news of the incident reaches the Vatican, the cardinals begin to suspect that there's more to the story, so they decide to send in their miracle expert Father Burke to get to the bottom of it. He'll be teaming up with a young initiate named Sister Irene to help with the investigation, but as usual, nothing could ever prepare them for what they're about to find. Alright, somebody needs to tell Father Burke here to be careful before he gets thrown out of a window next. This mission already has trouble written all over it, and if you were about to investigate an ancient castle where something so strange was going on that it caught the attention of the Vatican itself, then you'd have to be pretty damn stupid not to go in there prepared. Remember, Burke here isn't just some random guy off the street. He's played these games before and even performed exorcisms in the past. Now, if he was a plumber or something, then it would be safe to assume that the nuns had a clogged toilet, but since he's already known as the demon guy, well, it should be pretty obvious why they're sending him in. And just like every good plumber needs a wrench, Father Burke here needs something like a demon hunting kit. First off, he'll need a Latin copy of the Roman Ritual. That's the book that includes detailed instructions, remember, right? For performing Catholic baptisms, marriages, funerals, and most importantly for us, exorcisms. Yeah, he probably already has one, but he needs to keep that motherfucker on him at all times because you never know when a demon battle might pop the fuck off. And you don't want Pazuzu here to catch you lacking, if you follow me. I would also pack a large supply of holy water in offensively focused containers like bottles, water balloons, spray cans, or like a water gun so we can take care of this demon like a true American. Besides that, I'd bring about a loaf's worth of the concentrated host, that's the bread used during Holy Communion, several crucifixes that were blessed with holy water, some rosary beads to wear around his neck and both wrists, and even a good old St. Benedict medal, a widely used pendant from Catholic tradition that's specifically meant to protect you from demonic forces. Then just throw in some salt for good measure and he'll have all the tools he needs for the job. Now, before she was killed, Sister Jessica clearly said that the demon needs a vessel to escape, so simply by going there, he's actually giving the demon exactly what it wants. But of course, they'll have no way of knowing this until it's already too late. Back in Romania, the farmer wakes up from a terrifying nightmare to a series of loud knocks at the front door. Introducing himself, Burke explains that they're looking for information about the dead nun, and the man says that he found her body while delivering a shipment of supplies. Now, most locals refuse to go anywhere near the place because they say that it's under some kind of curse, so they eventually convince Frenchie here to show them the way. But that's about to be his biggest mistake. After traveling 4 miles deep into the countryside, they come to a place where the horse refuses to take another step, meaning they'll have to go the rest of the way on foot. It's not much longer before they reach the edge of the property where they find that it's surrounded by hundreds of handmade wooden crosses, but Frenchie here thinks that they're meant to keep the evil in, not out. It turns out that finding the body was the first time that he's ever seen one of the nuns, and when he tried knocking on the door, nobody ever came to answer. Leading them to the ice house, he explains that's where he left the body, and sure enough, it's still there when they peek inside. Only what's strange is that it's not where he left it. According to Frenchie, he left the nun lying on the ground, but now she's sitting straight up like she's waiting for the bus, with the strange iron key still frozen in her hands. The father decides that they should give her a proper burial, and once they're finished at the graveyard, they find a puddle of the woman's blood on the front steps, still fresh, as if it just happened. By now, it's obvious that this place is bad news, but Father Burke still has a job to do, and leading the way, he pushes through the doors as the others reluctantly follow him inside. There's no sign of anyone who lives there as the three of them make their way into the castle until Irene turns around to find an ancient nun silently watching them. The woman's face is completely hidden behind her black robes, but she introduces herself as the abbess, and Father Burke explains that they've come to investigate the mysterious death. Oddly enough, the old woman doesn't want to discuss it, but the priest insists that he needs to speak with the other sisters before he leaves. The only problem is, the nuns have already started their nightly vow of silence, so if he wants a chance to ask around, then he'll have to wait until the next morning. Alright, this place is giving off more warning signs than a gas station hot dog. And the fact that they're about to treat it like it's just a regular Airbnb just goes to show how dumb they really are. First off, we've got Sister Victoria's dead body moving around like she's got somewhere to be, which obviously shouldn't be possible. Father Burke says he's seen cases of bodies twitching, but that explanation is a reach at best. After death, the body goes through a chemical change that causes a condition known as rigor mortis, where the muscles become stiff in the first 2 to 6 hours, and then release about 1 to 2 days later. It also releases gases that can cause minor shifts and twitches, but it definitely wouldn't be enough for her to suddenly sit straight the f up. The fresh blood on the steps is another thing that should be biologically impossible. Blood is only bright red and fluid if it's still oxygen rich, but once it leaves the body, it quickly begins to lose oxygen, so by now it should have dried up into like a rust-colored stain. Then we have the abbess herself, and you might think it was her obvious Grim Reaper vibes that were the biggest red flag, but it's actually something even more sketchy than that. When she was speaking to Frenchie, she just started randomly speaking fluid French, even though they've never met and she has no idea where he's from. At an isolated convent deep in the forests of Romania, where all the nuns take a nightly vow of silence, you wouldn't expect her to speak French, right? But it's well known that demons have access to supernatural knowledge and the ability to speak all languages, so it's another subtle warning sign that she might already be under demonic control. Now remember, Father Burke's job wasn't to single-handedly solve the problem himself. He was only sent there to confirm that something supernatural was going on, and by now I'd say it's definitely starting to look that way. So if it were me, instead of spending the night, I'd hitch a ride with Frenchie back to town and then plan to come back the next morning if he still wasn't satisfied with the evidence. Seeing that it's getting late, Burke tells Frenchie that he can go home and come back for them in a few days, but it seems like the demon has other plans. Just as he's finding his way back to the cart, he spots a vision of the dead nun standing in the trail ahead of him. But as he gets closer, she suddenly appears from behind a tree and lures him even deeper into the woods. Eventually, he finds himself on the edge of a clearing full of wooden crosses, when all of a sudden, the demonic nun drops down from a tree and falls right on top of him. Pushing her off, he scrambles back into the field of crosses where the demon can't reach him, and giving up, it finally disappears to go after a different target, with Frenchie here taking a cross just in case it decides to come back. Back inside the abbey, Irene tells Father Burke the story of how she ended up deciding to become a nun. As a kid, she began to have very powerful spiritual visions that always ended up with the same message, which was, Mary points the way. This makes Burke think of another time from his past, where he was sent to investigate a boy who was having some similar visions. He eventually determined that the boy was possessed and attempted to give him an exorcism before it was too late. But sadly, he wasn't able to save the boy in time time, and he's been haunted by the guilt of it ever since. Hours later, the two of them are sound asleep when the radio suddenly turns itself on, breaking the silence with its distorted music. Startled awake, Father Burke cautiously goes to investigate, but the radio shuts back off again as soon as it's hit with the beam of his flashlight. Just then, he hears something clatter across the floor, but when he looks into the next room, he finds Irene still asleep in her bed. That's when he spots a small child just as he disappears around the corner, and following him out to the courtyard, he watches as the boy turns to run deeper into the forest. Alright, meat shields, it's time to talk about something serious. If you've ever been seriously hurt in an accident, car, work, or jigsaw related, you might not realize the true value of your injury. In fact, you could actually be eligible for millions of dollars in compensation. Now, here's something crucial to understand. Insurance companies often try to take advantage of people in these situations, offering settlements that are far less than what you deserve. I mean, can you believe that? But Morgan & Morgan, yeah, they don't play that game. They fight to get you the money you're rightfully owed if you become their client. I mean, just in the past couple of months, they've secured incredible verdicts for clients in life-altering car crash cases. $12 million in Florida, which was 34 times the highest insurance offer, and $26 million in Philadelphia, a staggering 40 times their initial offer. And the best part? You don't pay a single penny in attorney's fees unless they win your case. That's right, the fee is absolutely free unless you win. Look, all law firms are not created equal. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm for a reason. With over 1,000 attorneys across all 50 states, they've built a reputation on winning like a lot. Fighting big insurance companies can take a big law firm, and they are ready to take on companies of any size to protect your rights. It only takes a few minutes to find out if you even have a case, so don't overthink it. If you've been in an accident or suffered any injury, taking action now is the smartest thing you can do to protect yourself. Morgan & Morgan have even modernized the entire process. You can submit a claim and communicate with their legal team directly from your smartphone. It's just that easy. If you've suffered a serious injury, your case could be worth significant compensation, and a life-changing resolution could be just a few clicks away. It's simple to get started. You can begin your claim with Morgan & Morgan now at forthepeople.com/beat or by scanning the QR code on screen from your phone's camera. Remember, you guys don't have to go through this one alone. Thanks to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's video, and without further ado, let's get back to the show. Chasing after him, they end up back in the graveyard where he can see the child watching him from behind the tombstones. But every time that he shines his light on him, the kid just reappears in a different spot, until finally he stands long enough for the father to realize that it's the same boy who passed away during the exorcism. Holy f***ing shit. All of a sudden, he begins to choke as a massive snake emerges from his mouth, and backing up, the priest is so distracted that he falls right into an open grave. Terrified, he screams for help as he realizes what the hell is about to happen, but an instant later, the lid slams shut, and he's suddenly buried under 6 feet of dirt with no hope of escape. Okay, yeah, that escalated pretty quickly. I mean, it only took less than 24 hours for Father Burke here to end up in an early grave, literally. But he wouldn't even be in this situation if he hadn't fallen for the most obvious trap that anyone has ever seen. You see, fighting demons isn't just a physical battle, it's also a battle of the spirit, and one of their favorite tricks is to break you down by exploiting any unresolved guilt. So if Father Burke here was still carrying the guilt of what happened to the boy, then he should have gone to confession first and had his sins forgiven. That way, the demon wouldn't be able to use it against him. Now, being buried alive is one of the most terrifying situations I can possibly imagine, but he still might have a chance if he uses the right strategy. Like, first off, a coffin only contains about 60 to 90 minutes of breathable air, so he needs to use it wisely. Screaming for help's only gonna get him killed faster because it'd be borderline impossible for anyone to hear him unless they literally had their ear to the dirt. So instead, he needs to stay quiet and slow down his oxygen intake to extend his air supply for as long as possible. But he's still gonna run out of air eventually, so if he ever wants to see daylight again, it looks like his only choice is to break out of there Kill Bill style before he suffocates. The good news is that the coffin is made of wood, so it should be possible to break through. First, he should use the flashlight to start checking for weak points at the top corners near his head. Then he needs to angle his body sideways with his shoulders facing the weakest corner, tuck his knees to reduce the pressure on his chest, brace one arm against the opposite wall, and use a piece of cloth to cover his nose and mouth for when the dirt starts pouring in. After that, he can use the flashlight to start prying at the corner until he gets it to flex, and from there he can use it like a hammer until the board comes completely loose. Once the dirt starts coming in, he needs to use his hands to push it down towards his feet, while wiggling his shoulders up through the gap and then slowly but surely just keep tunneling his way out of there like a little mole rat until he reaches the surface. Is it technically possible? Maybe, but could anybody actually pull it off? I highly doubt it. So unless somebody comes to save the day, it looks like our boy Father Burke here is pretty much screwed, but lucky for him, that's exactly what's about to happen. Meanwhile, Irene is still asleep in her room when an unexplainable feeling wakes her up, and grabbing a lantern, she begins searching through the convent with no idea that the demon is watching her every move. The feeling guides her back to the old chapel, where she finds a group of nuns in black robes praying before the altar. As she watches, an enormous shadow rises up and glides across the wall, circling around her until it reaches the mirror, and suddenly, the demon reaches out to grab her shoulder, shattering the mirror as the crucifix crashes to the floor. Running back to the courtyard, she happens to hear Father Burke desperately ringing the grave bell, but when she follows the noise into the cemetery, the demon starts ringing the bell in the yard, making it impossible for her to figure out where the sound is coming from. There's only one thing that she can do, and focusing all of her attention on channeling her powers, she's able to give herself a vision of exactly what grave he's in. Rushing over to it, she starts digging up the grave as fast as she can, but inside, the father keeps hearing strange noises coming up from the darkness all around him, until suddenly, the demonic nun appears right next to him and starts grabbing onto his face. Just when it looks like he's done for, Irene finally manages to get through, causing the spirit to disappear. Looking back into the grave, they realize that it's full of ancient-looking books, and Father Burke decides that the answers that they're looking for might be hidden somewhere inside. When they get back to the abbey, they notice that the steps have even more fresh blood on them than before, but at this point, that's the least of their concerns. Going to the gate, he announces that they've come to see the other nuns, but Father Burke is not permitted to go any further, and giving her the mysterious key, he sends Irene in to investigate while he digs a little deeper into the old books that they found. At first, the place seems completely abandoned, but that's when she notices someone watching her from the shadows. Following her, she finds a nun praying inside of an empty chapel, but when she tries to speak to her, the woman refuses to respond. Before she can interrupt, another nun reaches out to stop her, explaining that someone has to keep praying at all times to keep the evil contained. The woman introduces herself as Sister Juana, telling Irene that she'll explain the whole story, but the truth is even worse than she could have possibly imagined. Meanwhile, back in town, Frenchie stops at the tavern for a hard-earned drink, where he learns that another one of the locals recently passed away. The owner blames it on the evil coming from the abbey and says that the two miracle hunters will probably end up dead next, but seeing a double-barreled shotgun hanging above the bar, Frenchie decides that it's time to take matters into his own hands. As he's poring over the books, Father Burke makes a shocking discovery. It seems like the incidents at the abbey are somehow related to an ancient demon known as Valak the Defiler, only just when he notices this, the gate slowly closes to shut him out, leaving Sister Irene trapped inside. Alright, so now we all agree that it's a demon. Got it. Well, better late than never, I guess, but just like always, this entire problem could have been avoided if they just left when they had the chance. Like, I know we came here looking for evidence of paranormal activity, but was being buried alive by a snake-vomiting ghost boy not enough for you? Forget sticking around until sunrise, I would have been halfway back to the Vatican by now. But since these two seem determined to figure this out on their own, there's something else that I would have tried first. Now remember, Father Burke needed help from a nun because they're the only ones allowed inside the abbey, right? But if that was their only requirement, then they would have chosen a nun who'd already taken her vows, instead of like a low-ranking initiate like Sister Irene here. But the reason why they sent her instead of anyone else was because of her visions. So if we're not using them to their full potential, then it's a huge wasted opportunity. Now, the incident back at the graveyard proves that her visions provide accurate information, so before going back into the abbey in person, I'd have tried using Irene's powers to see inside without actually knowing what's going on, you know what I mean? They just need a way to trigger her visions, but it might not be as complicated as you think. The fastest way to get her in the right mindset is through sensory deprivation, which means cutting her off from any external distractions. So, first, Irene should wrap a blindfold over her eyes and then use radio static to generate white noise, just like the bells ringing back at the graveyard. Then they can use a key as an anchor object to direct her vision towards whatever door it opens, since right now that seems like their best lead. The combination of the blindfold and the radio static should block out anything that might distract her, allowing her to focus completely on her own intuition, and, with any luck, this might just give her another vision that shows them exactly what they need to do next. While discussing things with Sister Juana, she notices that the older nun keeps coming to interrupt them, and the girl explains that many of them don't want any outsiders involved in their business. Many centuries ago, an evil duke built the castle where he would conduct occult experiments in an attempt to summon demonic forces. Eventually, the demon showed him how to open a portal, allowing it to pass through into our world. But the church stopped him just before the ritual was complete, sealing the portal shut using an ancient relic and guarding it for generations. That is, until hundreds of years later when the abbey was damaged during the war, and the demon was able to escape once again. After listening to her story, Irene tells Sister Juana about the demonic nun, and she explains that they've all seen her wandering the abbey late at night. Although she looks like one of them, it's actually the demonic spirit in disguise, and she's afraid that it's only a matter of time before it kills them all. Just then, they're interrupted by one of the older nuns, who says that it's time for Sister Juana here to take her shift on prayer duty. Realizing that Irene isn't an official nun yet, she tells the girl that it's time for her to go. But Juana points out that the gate is already closed, leaving her no choice but to stay in the abbey until the morning, leading the girl to Sister Victoria's old bedroom. Juana says that she'll have to stay there for the night. Before she goes, Irene asks her about the strange key, but the nun immediately denies knowing anything about it, locking the door from the outside as she leaves to go pray. Back in the entrance hall, Father Burke discovers a map that shows a secret tunnel leading to a ritual chamber somewhere on the property. This must be the source of the evil, but now he has to figure out how to find it. A moment later, he hears the abbess speaking to him from the shadows, and confronting her, he demands to know what the hell is really going on there. But instead of offering up any information, she simply tells him that it's already too late, before slumping over in her chair as a supernatural wind blows out the candles. Confused, Burke leans in closer to check on her when all of a sudden the body lunges forward to grab him by the arm, and as he pulls away, the woman's decayed hand breaks off and shatters into pieces on the floor. It turns out that Granny here was actually the demon the whole time, and it looks like they fell just right into its trap. Okay, well, surprise, surprise. Who could have seen that one coming? She's still trusting that the other nuns have good intentions, but I've seen enough to know by now that they can't be trusted. First of all, the demon is clearly not contained, and if this has been going on for a while now, then why did the Vatican have to send someone to them instead of the other way around? Wouldn't they have sent like a letter or something asking for help? Now let's see, Irene could try the door, but that idea has a few problems. It looks too heavy to break through, I'm not sure if she can pick the lock, and going that way would only lead her deeper into the abbey. So instead, I'd try Sister Victoria's strat of going out through the window, except our goal is to actually survive this time. After that, she needs to tie together a rope out of bed sheets, blankets, curtains, and whatever else that she can find. The best strategy is to use a type of knot called a sheet bend, which is best for joining ropes of different thickness. You start by making a loop in the thicker rope and then pushing the thinner rope through the loop and then tucking it back under itself, pulling it tight for a strong knot that's used in real-life escape scenarios, just like this. Once she's got that rope taken care of, secure it to the bed frame or something mounted to the wall, and before she goes, I'd try tossing the mattress out the window first. That way she'll have something cushioned to land on. Now, it looks like she has about 40 feet to go. The sheets should get her about 30 feet down, and if she has the long belt that she's wearing, then she can add another 6 feet or so. Then it's as simple as lowering herself all the way down to the bottom, dropping with her knees bent, and rolling when she hits the ground. like Link does. You know, in Legend of Zelda, easy, right? Once she's out, she can reunite with the priest and get out of there on foot. They'll have to run all the way back to town in the middle of the night, but it might not be as bad as you think. You know, earlier, Frenchie's horse stopped about a mile or so down the road, refusing to get any closer because it could sense the evil. Now, as strange as it sounds, some studies have shown that animals can detect changes in electromagnetic fields, allowing them to recognize the signs of supernatural danger before humans can. Yeah, look it up. The reason why this is important for us is because it shows them that the boundary of the demonic influence is there. So if they're able to make it to the point where the horse stopped, then making it back to town should be a piece of cake. Sometime late in the middle of the night, Irene wakes up to see a shadowy figure kneeling in the corner of her room. Approaching her, she notices that the woman is clutching a rosary in her hand, but as she leans over to pick up one of the beads, a vision of Sister Victoria appears right behind her, repeating the final moments that led up to her death. Just then, there's a series of loud bangs at the door as it slowly swings open on its own, and a distant voice whispers to her from somewhere in the darkness, quietly begging Irene for help. Nervous, she follows it until she reaches a crumbling chamber, leading her to the terrifying hallway where Sister Jessica met her demise. The heavy wooden door slowly creaks open on its own, and that's when she finds herself face to face with the demonic nun. Terrified, she tries to run away as it starts pulling her closer with its supernatural powers. I mean, the girl holds on for as long as she can, but just when she finally loses her grip, she's able to grab the key at the last second, and the door slams shut behind her. For a minute, it looks like she actually got away, until suddenly the demon reaches straight through the door. Panicking, she runs back down the hallway with the enormous shadow chasing after her. But at the last moment, Sister Juana pulls her to safety, telling Irene to get dressed and meet the others in the chapel. When she gets there, she finds one of the nuns already praying in front of the altar, but this time something is different. Lying on the floor next to her is a dead body covered with a white sheet, and pulling back the covering, she's horrified to discover that it's none other than her friend Sister Juana. Meanwhile, Father Burke has to run out of the chamber as the entire place starts crumbling all around him. But if he's going to save Sister Irene, then he'll have to find another way in. Back in the chapel, Irene covers up the woman's body again, just as the entire squad of nuns comes marching through the door. Getting into formation, they order the girl to get down and start praying with them, warning her to not lose focus no matter what type of crazy shit happens next. Following their instructions, she starts praying as hard as she can, but it isn't long before a powerful force blasts through the chamber as Irene is left completely untouched, and there's nothing that she can do but keep praying in hopes that it works. As for Father Burke, he makes his way over to the ice house where there's a delivery door that he can use to sneak back inside. Just as he's about to enter, he notices one of the grave bells dragging along the floor, and it disappears into a pool of frozen water on the other side of the shed. All of a sudden, a hand crashes through the ice as the possessed body of Sister Victoria emerges from inside. But just when it looks like he can't get away, Frenchie shows up at the last minute and chops the zombie's head clean off with an axe, saving the father's life just in time. Alright, Frenchie here is turning out to be a badass, and that's something I did not expect. My man just showed Father Burke how it's done, and this actually tells us something very important about the demon's minions. By taking out zombie Sister Victoria, he proved that these things can be defeated with good old physical violence. And Frenchie here already came in clutch with an axe and a shotgun. He says that he's saving the boomstick for emergencies, and since they never know what they might encounter inside, I'd say that it's a good idea. But after seeing this, it would be a huge mistake for Father Burke to go in there empty-handed. He should grab a weapon like a shovel from here at the ice house before going inside, and use the oil from his lamp to make them each a torch. Once they're inside the castle, Burke should lead the way using his holy abilities to ward off any threats, like by holding up a cross and saying prayers as they go along. When that doesn't work, Frenchie can back him up with his weapons, and they can work together to reach Sister Irene like before it's too late. Now, Frenchie's already going above and beyond by just coming back to help, but if there's one mistake that he made, it was forgetting to bring any extra meat shields from back in town. Yeah, I know you were thinking it. You were thinking it too. Back in the tavern, he overheard that the demonic influence is starting to affect the local community, causing their crops to die and even leading to a few deaths. Well, if it's only a matter of time before they're dead anyway, then why not form an angry mob and storm the castle the old-fashioned way? I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to round up a couple farmers with some pitchforks and torches, so before leaving town, town, it would have been smart to ask for some backup. That way, he and Father Burke wouldn't have to do all the fighting. Once they get to Sister Irene, they could try using her visions to find the relic and seal the gate, but I still think it's safer to get the hell out of there if they had the chance. Back inside, the demon starts slicing Irene's back, leaving behind painful wounds in an attempt to break her concentration. Just then, she hears several knocks at the door as Father Burke and Frenchie finally manage to find her. When she turns around, she realizes that the other nuns never even existed, and they were nothing but more demonic visions this whole time. Suddenly, the body springs up and plunges a sharpened cross straight into Father Burke's leg. Holding her down, Frenchie pins the zombie to the floor, while Irene grabs a cross from the father's bag, and holding it against the woman's head, he attempts to force the evil spirit out of her body. After a moment, the cross begins to glow red hot as the woman's body suddenly goes up in flames. Frenchie puts her down with a blast from his shotgun, saving them all at the last second. Her friends are worried that there's no way to stop the demon, but that's when Irene remembers something pretty important here. The demon can't fully enter our world without possessing a human soul, which is why Sister Victoria chose not to let it escape. This means that there's still time to close the portal, but if they're gonna do it, then they're gonna need to find the same relic that the knights used to shut it all those centuries ago. Thanks to her visions, she thinks she knows where they'll find the chamber, but first, she wants Father Burke here to make her an official nun. Asking her if she's sure, he takes out his Bible and accepts her vows as they get ready for the final battle. Following her lead, they make their way through the abbey and into the catacombs hidden deep underground, where they eventually come to a chamber that looks like a dead end. They find a secret keyhole hidden in the wall, and placing the key inside, she opens a secret compartment containing the holy relic itself, giving them everything they need to defeat the evil once and for all. Carefully holding the relic out in front of him, Burke says that only a nun has the power to use it, so when the time comes, it'll be Irene's job to seal the gate. With Father Burke leading the way, they come to the door that seems to be the source of the evil, and carefully heading inside, find themselves in an ancient dungeon. They need to work fast to find the portal, so they decide to split up to cover more ground, but it isn't long before Frenchie starts hearing noises in the dark. Suddenly, something growls at him from one of the pitch-black chambers, blowing out his torch with a blast of demonic energy, and horrified, he immediately goes running back to the others. Meanwhile, Irene turns around to see a nun standing behind her, when out of nowhere, she's blindsided by another zombie, but she gets away and finds herself in front of another open chamber. Alright, this might actually be one of the worst plans that I've ever seen, and it was all going great until they decided to split up. Like, Sister Irene here was literally the most important part of their plan, so what were they gonna do if she got nunned before they found the portal? Instead of splitting up, they obviously should have stayed as a group with Father Burke and Frenchie to watch her back. Then they could have used the relic to trigger another one of Irene's visions and let her intuition lead them straight to the chamber. That's not the only way they could have used this relic to their advantage. Think about it this way, right? Since even a small drop of the blood was powerful enough to seal the portal for centuries, it's logical to think that they could use it as a weapon or even a shield against the demon itself. Now that Sister Irene has officially been made a nun and can unlock the relic's true power, I would have taken a few drops of the blood and used them to enhance their weapons with even more demon-slaying potential. Then their axes and shovels would be just as effective against the demon as its army of zombified nuns. Yeah. I'd also put a few drops on everyone's neck, wrists, and ankles. That way, if the demon tried to grab them, it would be repelled by the holy protection, making them pretty much invulnerable to its attacks. If they thought of this one simple idea, they could have completely turned the tables to make it so the demon was the one running from them. But now it looks like they'll be lucky to make it out of here alive. She carefully opens the door and heads inside, but as she reaches the center of the room, she realizes that she's standing on top of a pentagram. She's already been surrounded by over a dozen nuns. Hearing her scream, Frenchie rushes to the door, but he isn't able to get through, and when Father Burke turns the corner, he's met by another group of demonic nuns that slowly begin to close in. Having to think quickly, he empties out a bunch of oil onto the floor before dropping his lantern into the puddle, creating a barrier of fire that holds the creature creature's back, at least for now. Using his shotgun, Frenchie decides that when you can't find a door, you can always just make one instead. But as he gets back to his feet, he realizes that he's completely surrounded by the zombified nuns now. With no other choice, he makes his way into the crowd while they all just stand there completely motionless, until suddenly they all split apart to reveal Sister Irene hitting a sick Michael Jackson pose in the middle of the dance floor. Going up to her, he pulls off the girl's hood as he tries to help, only to get sent flying clear across the room as the demon takes over her body. Pinning him up against a pillar, she grabs the shotty and gets ready to blow his head off, but while she's distracted, he's able to reach the relic on her neck, dipping his fingers in the blood and spreading it across her face. This sets Irene free from the demon's control, but grabbing Frenchie by the neck, it lifts him high into the air and launches the girl back into a flooded chamber. Finding his way through another hall, Father Burke is just about to reach them when he's attacked by the demonic snake, and it latches onto his eye before he's able to fling it away. Realizing that she's lost the relic now, Irene sees it floating in the water nearby, but before she can reach it, the nun rises up out of the pool and flies towards her, grabbing her neck as it forces her beneath the surface. This is where Burke tries to step in, but it smacks him against the wall and knocks him out cold. Luckily, while the nun is distracted, she's able to grab the relic just before falling unconscious. For a moment, it looks like the demon just won, but as it looks closer, it realizes that the glass is broken, and that's when Irene spits the holy blood all over his face, causing the demon to be torn apart and seeing the portal just as Frenchie pulls her to safety. Gasping for air now, she thanks her new friend for saving her life, and it looks like Father Burke managed to survive the fight too. With the portal sealed and the demon back in the underworld where it belongs, they say a prayer for the ones who didn't make it and set off back towards the village to live their lives in peace. In the end, that makes 2 down with 3 lucky survivors, but as they pull away, Frenchie touches an upside down cross, so it looks like the demon isn't finished with them after all. Alright, this is just great. So much for stopping the evil. They just set it free and completely wasted an ancient holy relic in the process. The worst part is this means Sister Victoria and the other nuns died for nothing because in the end, these 3 came along and gave the demon exactly what it wanted. Well, thanks for nothing I guess, because it looks like you 3 just f***ed up. Like if I didn't know any better, I would have thought that you were actually trying to get possessed this entire time. I mean, you said your job was to see if the grounds were still holy, right? Well, buddy, I don't know what kind of evidence you came there looking for, but one look at the place from the outside should have told you everything that you needed to know. What's crazy is that Frenchie here kept trying to warn you, but you managed to find an excuse for everything he said, even though absolutely none of it made any sense. Everybody's too scared to get within 5 miles of the place? Maybe just a local superstition. A dead body sitting straight up after spending weeks stashed in a freezer? Probably just gas or something. Fresh blood on the steps as if somebody just died right before you arrived? Perfectly normal. It happens all the time. I mean, what exactly was it gonna take for you to see the paranormal activity staring you right in the face? After being buried alive by a ghost kid and discovering a grave full of the most demonic-looking books that the world has ever seen, your genuine reaction was, I know, let's go back to bed and try again in the morning. My guy, this is the moment when you're supposed to sprint off the property and tell the Vatican that they can call in the Ghostbusters for all you care. Because whatever they're paying you, it's not enough to deal with some shit like this. Now, even though you kept falling for every trick in the book, somehow you actually managed to get the job done, but that's the problem. You thought that it was over just because you closed the portal, but you forgot the most important piece of the puzzle, homie. Ever since the beginning, the demon's goal was to inhabit a human's body so it could finally escape. So you'd think before leaving the property, it would have been smart to do one quick check, just to make sure that nobody had gotten possessed while you were all split up. But no. And now Frenchie is about to smuggle this demon right back into town without anyone knowing. It's pretty sad that you did all that just to release the demon into the world anyway. And now that there's nothing anyone can do to stop it, I think it's safe to say that you 3 just f***ed up. It's now been 4 years since the incident at the Abbey, and late one night at a chapel somewhere in France, a priest sends his altar boy down to the basement to retrieve some wine. Later on, he's carrying it back downstairs when he finds his ball placed on top of the steep stool, and thinking that it's quite strange, he kicks it away into the dark hallway behind him. When he turns around, he's surprised to find the ball right back in the middle of the room, but this time when he kicks it in the shadows, a jug of wine suddenly explodes, sending him running back up the stairs to find the priest. As the more strange noises begin to come from all around them, the priest leads the way into the chapel, where he's horrified to see the holy water boiling up until there's nothing left but a puff of steam. All of a sudden, the nun appears from the shadows and lifts him high into the air, and he screams as his body is completely engulfed in flames. I mean, there's nothing that the boy can do but run for his life, and before anyone knows what happened, a shadowy man leaves the scene and disappears down the alley, making one down with 6 more to go. After defeating the demon and quite possibly saving the entire world, Sister Irene decided to live the quiet life at a convent in Italy. Now, instead of battling demons, she helps out junior nuns who've picked up some bad habits, like her good friend Sister Deborah here. But little does she know that the Vatican is about to bring her out of retirement. As for her old buddy Frenchie, he's going by his real name Maurice now, and working at an old monastery somewhere in France that's been turned into an all-girls boarding school. He's got a crush on this teacher, Miss Kate, and the woman's daughter Sophie is pretty much his best friend, but the girl has a lot of trouble fitting in with the other students. One morning, after waking from a terrifying nightmare, Sister Irene learns that someone from the Vatican is there to see her. The cardinal explains that they've been tracking a series of suspicious deaths at churches all across Europe, and they all seem to connect back to the demon that she battled years before. They think the demon from the abbey has somehow come back, and with Father Burke having died from a sudden illness, she's the only person alive with real demon-slaying experience, so they're sending her on a mission to track it down and slay it again. Now, you'd probably have to imagine that Sister Irene obviously wants nothing to do with this, but if someone doesn't stop it, then there's no telling where the demon might strike next, so with no other choice, she boards a train and heads to France in search of answers, never suspecting just how much worse everything is about to get. Alright, this all sounds awfully familiar. Maybe a little too familiar, if you ask me? Like we're trapped in a sequel? No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, Sister Irene here already tried saying no, but it seems like this is one of those jobs that you really can't refuse, right? So if the Vatican is making her go out demon hunting again, then she doesn't want to make the same mistakes as last time. When it comes to fighting a demon, knowledge is power, and the more that she knows about what it wants, the better her chances are of defeating it. Based on what they know so far, it seems like it's attacking at very specific locations, and if they can figure out why, they can predict where it's going to strike next. First, I'd request a full report on each attack, including the exact location, time and date, a profile of the victim, and if there was anything significant about the location itself, like if the place is known for storing any holy relics. If we look for connections between the victims, we might be able to figure out why they were targeted, and this could help us predict who the next target might be. If possible, I'd even ask them to mail her a personal item that's connected to each incident. That way, she could use her visions to see if it tells her anything. Now, if holy relics can be used to defeat the demon, then it might want to get control of these objects before they can be used against it. The church should already know where most of them are, and since the demon is steadily moving west across Europe, any locations that are known to have a relic on site need to be prepared for battle. I would suggest moving the relic to a fortified chamber that's been blessed and sealed off with prayers. Then leave a high-ranking priest and an armed guard to watch it 24/7, and if they notice any signs of trouble, they need to call up the Vatican like pronto. But there's something else important that they're forgetting. Sister Irene and Father Burke weren't the only ones at the Abbey. Frenchie was there too. When Sister Irene last saw him, he said that he was going to Hungary, which matches up with the scene of the first attack. If Irene had noticed this, she could have asked someone in Hungary to see if her old buddy Frenchie had been in the area, and maybe learned where he was headed next. Or if she still has something personal from her time together, she can use it to induce a vision and see where he is. Now, one last thing before she gets going. Instead of doing this alone, she needs to bring a team of meat shields with her. I mean, she hasn't realized that Sister Deborah is already planning to join her, but I'd also ask the Vatican to assign me like a researcher with deep knowledge about demons, holy relics, and all that important stuff. and a priest armed with, like, all of the demon fighting gear that we mentioned back at the start of the video. And we need to make sure that everyone goes to confession this time so the demon can't use their guilt against them. And finally, Irene needs to be ready to defend herself as effectively as possible. She's obviously going to carry her rosary, a crucifix, a Bible, and some holy water, but why not ask the cathedral here if he has any ancient relics that he can spare? If they have a few extra holy hand grenades lying around, that could be a big help, and trust me, Irene here, yeah, she gonna need all the help she can get. As the train winds through the countryside, Sister Deborah unexpectedly shows up at Irene's compartment, explaining that she thought her friend might need some backup. Worried, Irene warns her that this demon is no jokeskis, but her friend insists on sticking by her side even though it's obvious that her mentor disapproves. Meanwhile, back at the school, Sophie here gets caught by her bully Celeste and the girl's two minions. The girl apologizes for giving her a hard time, and since there's still a few minutes before they need to get back to class, she invites Sophie here to go have some fun, but the poor kid has no idea that she's walking straight into a trap. Following them to the school's forbidden chapel, she finds the girls gathered in front of an old stained glass window. They say that they want to play a game called Defy the Devil, and Sophie's turn is about to start. Telling her to stand right in front of the window, they explain that the devil looks back at you when the sunlight shines through it in just the right way, and sure enough, the goat's eye begins to glow red as the girls leave the room, warning Sophie here not to look away whatever she does. Obviously terrified, the girl stands there staring back at the window until the eye fully stops glowing, but just then she begins to hear something moving in the darkness right behind her. As she runs back to the door, the other girls pull it shut from the outside, and a huge statue almost falls over right on top of her. But Frenchie here finally comes to save the day, scaring away the other girls and letting her out just in time. After a long trip, the sisters arrive at the chapel where the priest was burned alive, and when she looks at the picture of his body, Irene begins to have a vision of ashes falling down from the sky. Suddenly, the doors creak open behind her as a shadowy figure enters the chapel and holds out his hand to show her a rosary necklace. But the vision disappears when Sister Deborah snaps her out of it. Speaking to the nun, they learn about the altar boy who witnessed the entire thing, and she says that they can usually find him playing football somewhere around town. The only other person who was there at the time was a handyman who fled the city the next day, and that's when Sister Irene learns that the suspect is none other than her old friend, Frenchie. Filling Sister Deborah in on the backstory, Irene realizes that Frenchie must have become possessed during their fight with the demon, and now they'll have to stop him before he strikes again. Alright, I guess it's true what they say. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Now, Irene just found out that her buddy Frenchie might be connected to these demonic attacks. And they also learned about the altar boy who might have seen something, so this gives us two fresh ideas for our investigation. First, let's start with the search for Frenchie. After killing the priest, he would have been trying to get out of the area quick, and in 1950s France, the most common forms of long-distance travel were trains and buses. So if they want to find out where he went, those might be good places to start. First, Irene should go to the nearest train station and ask if the workers recognize Frenchie's description. They most likely won't think twice about helping a nun, and if she explains that it's somebody close to her, they might be willing to share more personal details, like they most likely keep a logbook of ticket sales, so if anyone bought a one-way ticket at a suspicious hour and left in a hurry, that can probably help narrow it down. He's probably headed towards another church or convent, so that should also help narrow the search. Now, if he traveled by bus, it might be a little bit more difficult, but she can still ask the drivers if they noticed a guy who matches Frenchie's description any time over the last few days. I'd also check at the local taverns to see if anyone there recognizes him, because he might have left behind clues about where he was going. And if there's a known relic site that's a few days travel from the city, they should call the hotels in the area to see if her friend Maurice already checked in, because that's probably where he's headed next. And finally, if he left any personal belongings here at the church, she might be able to use them to induce a vision that tells her where to find him. Now, while Irene tracks down Frenchie, Sister Deborah should be out looking for this altar boy. Irene could try using her vision to find him, but if that doesn't work, Deborah has to get out of there and find him the old-fashioned way. The nun mentioned that he plays football around town, and they probably start right after school, so if Deborah goes to the local school right when he's getting out, she might spot the kid and his friends as they're heading out to play. Otherwise, the best places to check would be in the town square and the open fields or parks where kids might be hanging out. If she sees any groups of kids, then she could just go up and ask them if the boy is around, and Sister Deborah here is still young and cool enough that they'll probably trust her. But with that being said, he's probably still traumatized from this whole experience, so they'll have to be careful with how they approach him. Before asking him anything about the demon, Deborah should bring him something like a new soccer ball as a way to earn his trust. Then he'll be more likely to tell her everything that he knows. Once they find out anything, they should call the Vatican right away to update them on the situation, but if they go about this right, it shouldn't take long before they're able to track Frenchie down. At the boarding school, Sophie hears her mother calling from down the hall, but when she goes to find her, the woman silently turns and disappears up the steps. Chasing after her, she follows her mother all the way up to the abandoned top floor, where a dark figure slowly pulls the door shut behind her. Nervous, the girl pushes it open, only to see the demonic nun posted up at the end of the hall, and all of a sudden, a flock of crows bursts out through the darkness and swarms right at her. Horrified, she takes off running back down the steps, only to find the nun already blocking her path, but that's when her mother opens the door and the sunlight makes the vision disappear. The sisters eventually arrive at their hotel later that night, but when Sister Irene steps outside for some fresh air, a group of boys comes running down the street. As the crowd filters past her, she realizes that one of them is the altar boy who witnessed the attack at the church. But before she can ask any questions, he turns a corner and disappears into thin air. Very confused, she spots him a bit further down the street, chasing after him until they reach a magazine stand on the next street over. By the time that she gets there, the boy has already vanished once again. And as she looks around, she realizes that the street is completely abandoned. Just then, the pages on the magazines start to flip over one after another, forming different types of disturbing images, until they all come together to reveal the figure of the nun. As she leans in for a closer look, the demon suddenly jumps off the pages and grabs her by the throat, causing her to have a terrifying vision of a woman holding a strange metal object. Sister Deborah finds her a moment later, passed out in the middle of the street, and horrified, the girl immediately screams for help, having no idea what just happened to her hand. Later on that night at the boarding school, the headmistress is saying her prayers when she hears a suspicious noise coming from the chapel. Going to investigate, she finds Frenchie quietly standing there in the darkness, and it looks like he's trying to get inside. When she touches his shoulder, he suddenly spins around as if he was sleepwalking, apologizing as he heads back to his room. Just when she's about to leave, she hears a voice whisper "Mama" from behind her shoulder, and hearing laughter from inside the chapel, she quickly unlocks the door and decides to check it out. As she looks around, a dark shadow runs down the hall, luring her into the room with the stained glass window. She can hear something scuttling around in the darkness, but there's absolutely no sign of anyone there, until suddenly the woman sees a vision of her dead son as he disappears behind one of the statues. Drawing her back to the center of the room, the spirit appears in front of her holding a metal incense burner, but that's when the demon puts its hand on his shoulder and the kid starts beating the shit out of her like it's wielding a medieval flail. Knocking her back, he pushes her up against the scaffolding, where a metal pulley drops down and hits her square on top of the head, making 2 down with 5 more to go. Who knew that running a boarding school could be such a headache? Now, first of all, this old lady here should have never gone to investigate those noises in the first place. Anytime you hear a child's voice whispering to you from the shadows, you need to fucking run in the opposite direction. But for her, it's actually understandable because she's the one in charge of these kids, and the chapel here is supposed to be off limits. So I guess it kinda makes sense why she'd fall for it. Once the paranormal activity started, you think that that would be her sign to leave, but the demon fooled her again by taking the form of her dead son. Just like the nuns pointed out before, the demon takes whatever form it thinks would be the most disturbing for its target. If she had known this, she might have been able to see right through the trick long enough to escape, but since she has no idea that demonic forces were even at play, she was completely caught off guard. Now, what's interesting about the ghost here is that it seems to exist in a physical form, and that's actually good news because it means that we have the option of fighting back. His weapon gives him like a reach advantage and is most effective at mid-range, so backing up is actually the opposite of what you need to do. Instead, you need to dodge the first attack and then close the distance to get inside his swing arc. Since he's only a little kid, a grown adult rushing him at full speed should be enough to knock him over, but you could always grab a piece of rubble off the ground to use as an improvised weapon if need be. The important thing is that you don't have to win the fight, just stay in control long enough to get past him and run for the door. Now, the woman's son actually did die in the chapel, and it seems like the demonic activity is contained inside for now, so as long as you can get outside, you should be in the clear. But the headmistress isn't the first person who the demon targeted. Poor little Sophie here has already had an encounter with it herself, and after the woman's death, she needs to tell her mother exactly what happened to her back in the chapel. That way, she can bring it to the right person's attention before things get out of control. Just to be safe, I'd also stay near her other classmates at all times until they've figured out what the hell is going on here. The same goes for sisters Irene and Deborah. The demon only attacked her after she was lured away from her friend, so from now on, they need to stick together. That way, Deborah will be there to back her up the next time something happens. Sometime the next morning, Sister Irene wakes up to find herself back in the hotel room with her friend Deborah nervously watching over her. As soon as the doctor leaves, she explains that they're getting closer to their answer, and it seems like the demon is using her buddy Frenchie to go after some kind of ancient relic. That's when Deborah says that she met the altar boy for reals while her mentor was asleep, and he was still holding onto the rosary that he got off of the dead priest. Looking closer, Irene notices a strange symbol on the necklace, and her friend matches it up to another photo from their evidence, showing that there must be some kind of connection here. None of them are sure what it means, but Irene says that she has a friend who might know, so they head to the archives to see if they can turn up any new leads. Meanwhile, back at the school, Miss Kate notices that the chapel door is unlocked, and checking inside, she's horrified to find the headmistress's body lying in a pool of blood. As the police arrive to take her away, she asks Frenchie if he's seen her daughter, but neither of them know where the girl is, so they both start searching every inch of the property to look for her. Eventually, he manages to find Sophie way up in the bell tower, and for some reason, the girl looks extremely upset. Worried, she tells him that the headmistress never goes inside the chapel, and she feels like some kind of evil presence is trying to take over the school. Reassuring her, he says that it's normal to feel afraid sometimes, promising her that the school is perfectly safe. But the poor girl has no way of knowing that her friend here is actually the demon in disguise. With almost no time to waste, the sisters head over to the archives where they meet with Irene's friend, Father Ridley. Upon taking a look at the necklace, he determines that it's the family crest of St. Lucy, which means that the demon must be targeting her entire bloodline. Putting it all together, Irene realizes that it must be searching for St. Lucy's eyes, which became a holy relic after the woman was killed centuries ago. I don't know exactly what it's planning, but if the demon gets its hands on the relic, then it's safe to say that they're all in pretty big trouble. But the priest also believes that Irene here might be able to unlock the power of the relic for herself, using it to defeat the demon once and for all. There's just one problem. She has no idea where to find it, but searching the records, they track it down to a boarding school somewhere in France, and it's the very same school where her buddy Frenchie is about to strike next. Okay, we're actually getting somewhere. Thanks to their research, they know exactly where the demon is, who's carrying it, and what it's after. So now it's time to put all the pieces together and come up with a battle plan. Now, first off, they should try to rally more help while here at the archives. If this demon gets its hands on the relic, then the entire world is screwed. So there's no reason why Irene and Deborah should have to do all this by themselves, and they'll stand a much better chance with a bunch of highly skilled priests and nuns all working together. Next, they should try calling the boarding school ahead of time to warn them. Yeah, with the headmistress dead, this leaves Miss Kate in charge, and since Frenchie has a crush on her, they can actually use this to their advantage. They're only about an hour away, but they need to make sure that he doesn't get to the relic first, so what they need to do is have Miss Kate keep him distracted until they get there. While she keeps him busy, they can send in some local priests to prepare a trap, blessing one of the rooms and sprinkling holy water around the exits to keep him contained once he's inside. Then once they're ready, Kate can lure him into the room and the priests can keep him occupied while Irene and Deborah search for the relic. Now, for a relic this important, it would make sense to hide it in the most holy place on the property, so the chapel is where I would check first. Many relics throughout history were also hidden under the altar, so I'd check there for like loose stones or something. They can also use the symbol from the rosary to check if it matches up with anything etched into the walls or floor, because that could mark the secret compartment that holds the relic. And if that doesn't work, they can always try using Irene's vision instead. In Catholic tradition, and St. Lucy is known as the patron saint of the blind. So Sister Irene could put on a blindfold marked with St. Lucy's emblem, and this might induce a vision that shows her exactly where to find it. Then all that's left to do is keep the relic contained and perform an exorcism on her buddy Frenchie, and they should be in the clear. Back at the school, Frenchie's dancing to some records with Miss Kate and her daughter when a strange feeling starts to come over him. At first, he acts like it's nothing, but he suddenly falls over and crashes to the ground. And that's when Kate notices the upside-down cross scarred into the back of his neck. As he looks up at Sophie, he sees the demonic nun appear inside a painting on the wall, and suddenly the demon crashes straight through the painting and roars at them with a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. Grabbing their hands, Frenchie leads the girls to safety just as the sisters finally arrive at the school. But when he tries to warn them that the demon is back, Sister Irene shouts at him to get away. That's when she drops the knowledge that he's been carrying the demon all along, and heartbroken, he starts breaking down over what he's hearing, refusing to believe that he's actually possessed. Suddenly, everything changes as the demonic force takes over his body, twisting his bones and yanking his head back while the others can't do anything but watch. Looking up, he growls, "Hello," at Sister Irene in a demonic voice, before turning and walking back towards the chapel. But when Irene tries chasing after him, he knocks her whole body into the air and sends her flying straight through a window. Rushing to help, Sister Deborah jumps onto his back and tries to pull him down, but he flips her over his shoulder and uses the force to drag her back down the hallway. It's enough to give Sister Irene a chance to get back on her feet, and pulling out her rosary, she commands the demon to leave her friend alone, stunning it just long enough for Deborah to knock him out with a wooden stick. With no idea what'll happen when he wakes up, their only choice is to chain Frenchie up to the wall and hope that they can find a way to save him in time. Even then, they're not sure if the chains will actually hold him down for very long, so whatever they're going to try, they'll have to figure it out quickly. Going back to the others, the sisters ask where they think he was headed, and Kate here says that he was going towards the Forbidden Chapel. Looking for answers now, Irene decides that that's a pretty good place to check, and while they're digging around for any clues, she explains that they came in there in search of the holy relic. Okay, after seeing what their buddy Frenchie here is capable of now that he's under full demonic control, they should know better than to think that a bunch of normal ropes and chains would be enough to hold him down. I mean, the guy was just using the force to throw full-grown adults around the room like rag dolls. So as soon as he wakes up, you can bet it'll only be a matter of seconds before he breaks out of that shit. But the battle in the hallway proved that a combination of the right prayers and physical attacks are enough to overpower him, so here's what they should have done instead. Now, the most important part of containing him isn't about the physical restraints. You need spiritual reinforcement to really do the job. So first, they should use blessed chalk, oil, holy water, or salt to draw a protective circle on the floor. And I'd also surround it with like a Latin prayer meant to ward off demonic spirits and anchor it with holy candles placed at all four corners. Then I would wrap rosary beads all over his neck, wrists, and ankles, and finally, that's when you add the chains. But make sure they're anointed with holy water first, and they can even write the same Latin prayer onto the chains themselves. The most powerful form of protection would have to be Sister Irene praying over him at all times, but they can't exactly do that while also searching for the relic. But since this is a religious boarding school, they might have prayers on records, so I'd grab the record player and leave the players playing on a loop to keep Frenchie here in a weakened state. That's pretty much all they can do besides assigning someone to guard him around the clock, but if they do it right, this could buy them enough time to find the relic before he escapes. Miss Kate can't seem to help them much, saying that the chapel has always been off limits, even for the adults. And that's when Deborah notices the girl staring at something on the wall. Asking her what's up, she points to the goat on the stained glass window and tells them all about the game, explaining that the eye glows red when the light hits it at just the right angle. So they send Sister Deborah outside to try it for themselves. Finding her way around to the other side, Deborah uses her flashlight to shine against the window, and sure enough, they see the light coming through the goat's eye, just like the kid said. Tracing the beam with her hand, she follows it to a loose tile on the floor, and prying it up, the two of them start digging as fast as they can. But it looks like they weren't quick enough, because while While they're all distracted, Frenchie breaks out of his chains and disappears without a trace. While her mother is busy digging, Sophie gets a feeling that something isn't right here, and turning around, she's horrified to discover that the goat from the window has completely vanished. Meanwhile, over at the dormitory, the girls are sound asleep when Celeste hears someone walking around upstairs, and worried, she sends one of her minions up there to check it out. At the same time, Sister Deborah is making her way back to the others when she hears the noises too, and decides that she better go have a look. After digging several feet into the ground, they finally hit something solid, and Sister Irene is relieved to see that they've found the relic that they were looking for. Now she has everything she needs to fight the demon, but it's going to be even more dangerous than she could possibly imagine. Reaching the staircase, Sister Deborah finds the petrified girl on the level above her, and she whispers that there's someone upstairs. Shining her flashlight around and around, she winds her way all the way up to the very top floor, and that's where it passes over a strange figure crouched in the darkness. Suddenly, a demonic goat man starts trampling down the stairs right towards them, but Sister Deborah races up from the floor below, reaching the girl and slamming the door shut just in time. Horrified, the other girls all back into a corner as the demon slams against the other side of the door until finally it manages to break through and starts dragging one of them out into the hall. Now, luckily, Sister Deborah is able to reach the girl in time, and they all retreat back into the next room as the demon starts throwing the furniture against the walls. Hearing their screams, Kate realizes that the girls are in trouble and immediately rushes to help them, but she doesn't make it far before she's cut off by Frenchie. Throwing her against the wall, he pushes the woman out of the way and makes a beeline straight for Sister Irene, tackling her to the floor as he starts smacking her head against the ground. I mean, it looks like she's done for, but that's when the girl grabs the relic and takes off running out of the room, causing the demon to drop Sister Irene as it turns to go after her instead. Alright, well, that plan just fell apart in a major way. Now we've got multiple threats to deal with, and the only thing standing between the demon and the relic is poor little Sophie here, so they need to choose their next moves very carefully. First, let's start with Sister Deborah and the kiddos. They're being chased through the halls by some kind of terrifying goat demon, but there's no reason why they can't fight back. Now, they've already seen that shutting the door is enough to stop it, at least for a little while, but it can still use its powers to throw people around the room, even from the outside. So just because you've managed to slow it down, don't stop moving. They need to keep running and put as much distance between themselves and Mr. Evil Tumnus here as possible. As they go, they should close the doors, flip over beds, and do anything they can to block the path. I mean, it couldn't hurt to grab a piece of a bed frame or broken furniture to use as a weapon, or if she can find an open flame, Deborah can make herself a torch to hold it back. And of course, if they pass by a crucifix or some holy water, grab those in case they need to use it later. Now, the one thing that's worth pointing out is the goat man here came from the stained glass window. So if they can fight their way back to the chapel and smash the window, then they might break its tether and banish it from the real world. Crazier things have happened. Now, as for Sophie here, she needs to buy enough time for Sister Irene to get back to the fight. But she's not going to stand a chance if Frenchie's able to catch her. I mean, he might be strong, but he still has to obey the laws of physics. So as she climbs the tower, I'd look for any place where there's only one way up and use it to slow him down. If she has to climb a ladder, she could try pulling it up once she gets to the top or covering the opening with a heavy piece of furniture. The key for her is to survive long enough for backup to get there and then just throw the relic down to Sister Irene, and she can use it to defeat the demon for good. Racing all the way up to the top of the tower, the girl ducks around a corner just as Frenchie comes walking up behind her. Terrified, she stays as quiet as possible while he searches the place for any sign of her, but that's when the relic gives her away, sensing its power and lunges down to grab her. But at the very last second, it stuns him with a blast of holy energy, giving her another chance to get away. She starts racing around the platform with Frenchie chasing after her until suddenly the giant bell breaks loose and crashes straight through the floor. For a moment, it looks like she's safe, but that's when the platform starts to come loose, until all that's holding her up is a single rope that could snap at any second. Suddenly, Frenchie jumps onto the other side of the platform, but one of the boards suddenly breaks away, and he falls all the way down to the bottom of the tower as the girl climbs to safety. Now reaching the basement, Sister Irene is terrified that she might already be too late, but she's revealed to see that Sophie here has survived the battle. She also held held onto the holy relic and gives it back to Sister Irene just in time, because that's when Frenchie emerges from the shadows and charges straight at them. Pushing the girl away, Irene holds up the relic and uses it to force the demon back. Finally, he collapses to the ground with black blood pouring out of his eyes, but as Irene starts to worry, he suddenly grabs the relic out of her hands and springs up, holding it towards the sky. Filling with power, the relic turns red hot and bursts into flames as the demon tries to take control. Suddenly, the entire building shakes as the demonic nun rises up from behind Frenchie, using the relic to take her most powerful form yet. Holding up her rosary, Sister Irene decides that all she can do is start praying, but the nun wraps a chain around Sister Deborah's neck and starts pulling her down into a big puddle of wine. Turning on Irene, the nun lifts her high into the air and starts burning her alive, and it looks like there's nothing that anyone can do to stop it either. Deborah can only watch as her friend is engulfed in flames, but just when it looks like there's no hope, Irene has a powerful vision of her mother, and that's when everything changes. Suddenly the flames go out and she falls back to the ground just as Deborah manages to get free from the chain. Furious, the demon starts hurling chunks of rubble across the room, but Deb grabs her friend and pulls her out of the way. Sophie comes running back through the center of the room and the demon traps her inside a circle of spikes, just as Frenchie starts closing in with a sharp piece of metal. Somehow he's able to resist the demon's commands, but with no way to get through the spikes, the sisters put their hands in the puddle of wine and start to pray. As they're praying, Irene realizes that she's actually one of the descendants of Saint Lucy herself, giving her the power to perform miracles even without the holy relic. Suddenly, the barrels of wine all begin to explode at the same time, showering the demon with holy energy until it suddenly bursts into flames. Back over in the chapel, the terrified girls see the goat appear back in the window, and for now, it looks like they're finally safe. While the sisters take care of Frenchie, Sophie rushes outside to find her mom, and she's relieved to find that she's still alive. Although it's not looking that good at first, Frenchie here survives the battle as well, and he thanks Irene for saving his life. In the morning, Sophie comes to see Frenchie in the garden, rushing over to hug him now that he's feeling like himself again. It looks like they'll finally get to live happily ever after, and in the end, that makes 2 down with 5 survivors, but something tells Sister Irene that the demon might still be inside of him, and the thought makes her nervous as she watches them go away. The Nun. And The Nun Part 2. Okay, Conjuring Universe, I see you. If you've made it this far to the video, then sheesh, you a real one. You must have stayed this long to hear me say have a damn good day. Don't worry, I'm gonna say it. But I gotta say, man, I got this homie, and him and his girl, they love all this Catholic horror, so they put me on this one, and I gotta say, I do it. But with all those crazy scenarios and not a cell phone in sight, I'm pretty sure that there's other things that we could have done to outsmart the evil nuns, so you gotta let me know what they are down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and wait for it, hold up. Ooh, hey, oh, have a damn good day.